Hi Alan, it's Julia. One of the questions you asked was about the loopback in this area. Notice it's called LO0. I'm going to jump to the end of my presentation and show you how to configure that. Okay, here's actually in router 2. You go in for enable, config space T to get in configuration. Then you would type in interface, INTERFACE, L and a 0. That says it's a loopback and a 0. You can also type the full word loopback, LOOPBACK space 0 and put that in. Then you would give it the IP address. This one is 209.165.200.161, and then the subnet mask. Press enter. You do not have to do no shut with a loopback, which is a virtual interface, but it's just good practice to continually show the students to do it that way. The router you chose, the 2800 model, is okay. The majority of them in the lab is going to be 1841s. The 2800 is a more advanced router than we own. I've asked for some money. Hopefully we'll get some of those, but the 1841s is what we'll actually be using. I'm going to run through some of these with you. On task 2 on that lab that you're looking at, these are actually the things one does to begin to configure the basics of a router. The enable password, the config terminal, the no IP domain lookup, so it doesn't go and try to look up any wrong commands you type and think it's a web address. Enable secret class. The enable secret encrypts the password, with the password in this case being class. The banner message of the day, MOTD, they use the top hat. You could use the $ or the number sign. I always like $. But remember, whatever symbol you start with, down here you have to end with to have banner know that it's the end of a banner. So banner message of the day, starting symbol, type your text as much as you want, end with the same symbol. Line console 0, exec timeout 0 and 0. That's going to time you out real quick. You might put for a lab 120 and 0, 120 minutes space 0 seconds. 5 and 0 is typical. Logging synchronous, this just says don't interrupt those commands as I type them in when the system doesn't update. So it will come down to the next line and repeat your command again. Password and a login. Virtual terminal. Without the virtual terminal password and login configured, you can't telnet from one router to another or from the PC to the router. And that just says to copy the running config. This is task 2 where you're actually working on the switches. So these are some of the normal things you would do to configure a switch. Similar stuff right here as far as enable and no IP domain lookup, the secret class, and a banner. The console line, very similar. Virtual terminal, it's not uncommon to go 0 space 15 on virtual terminals, so that you'll actually be configured 16 lines. So that's not uncommon at all. I want to jump forward and look at the task. This is actually task 3, router 1, where you're beginning to configure these routers. A couple of things to notice. They're saying to configure the interfaces for router 1, 2, and 3, and the next thing they'll have us do is verify. This section, where it's just configuring an interface, this one we did not have to do. However, 01 would be the first one. You'll need to come and do this part. Interface fast Ethernet 0/1.10. This is because you're going to have some of the other encryption and some of the different things, the virtual terminal. But more than anything, you're going to have STP and VTP going on. Encapsulation .1Q for the quality. Space 10 gives it the number of which one this is. And then we've got it down here at .12 and 13. So we've got all those set up with their different IP addresses of 10.1, 12.1, and 13.1 respectively. You'll also need to configure the serial interface. That's going to go from, again, this is router 1, and this serial interface is going up to router 2. So set that, we set the clock rate. Router 2 we're going to configure. Similar stuff here. Start with, these are called sub-interfaces. You don't configure the main one here, but you do configure subs when you're actually doing STP and VTP. Again, the same kind of thing, 0/1.12, and this is encapsulation .1Q12, and then you give me the address. Same thing for the .20. This one has 2 serial interfaces because this is the router in the middle, and set all those things up. Okay, this is actually still in the task 3, and this is actually router number 3's config. At the top, the Ethernet interface, we didn't do that again, but down here we start doing the sub interfaces /1.13, so it's 0/1 port. Same thing here, 0/1.30, and put all that in, and you've got one serial interface to configure on this router because it's going from router 3 to router 2. Okay, this again is task 3, where we're doing the show IP interface brief to make sure that our interfaces are up before we go any further. So there's 1, 2, and 3 we've configured and checked on, and they're all. Now the fun part begins. This is task 3, where you're configuring and activating the serial and Ethernet interfaces, only in this case, we are actually doing the management VLANs on the 3 switches. The one at the top is actually going to be our first one. This is switch 1. Interface VLAN 10. You give me the IP address for that and the mask. Then you'll move to the second switch, switch 2. Interface VLAN 20 and the IP address for that one. And then similarly, we're going to do number 3. So this is on the third router. And then down here is the IP address for that one. At that point, again, you would go ahead and do PC1 and PC2's Ethernet interfaces and then test to make sure that PCs can ping. You had one more question, and I'm not ignoring that one. I figure it might be best to break this up into another video, even though Doodlecast will let me make 60-minute videos, but that'd probably kill you.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.